Today I'm going to wire this Madagascar palm into this bonsai training pot. I'm using the training pot because the wiring holes at the bottom down here allow me to support a plant that's so unbalanced. So without wiring this root ball into the pot, the plant would never stand up, especially since I'm about to reduce this soil and root mass by probably about 50%. So the wiring technique allows me to pull off a look that I ultimately want to have in a way that I couldn't otherwise do. And I'll show you how. It's been said that one man's trash is another man's treasure. You can see how this Pachypodium lamrii, the trunk here, has a pretty righteous hook. I have a friend, he's a, look at that, he's a cactus and succulent collector, a specialist in a lot of ways. I respect him a lot, but he doesn't like crooked trunks, and it just so happens that I do. A useful attribute of mine is that I'm nothing at all above a good dumpster dive when a beautifully bent plant is in need of rescue. So the end of that story today is that I'm wiring this Pachypodium into a bonsai starter pot. You can see there's a good amount of granite that has been used in that potting blend. By the way, when I grab something like this, it is obviously, I'm just stubborn. It's best to wear some sort of leather glove or something, but the way I do this is that I kind of pull the spines upward. They're a little bit flexible, so they're not actually stabbing into my hand. They're pressing sideways. That's the trick to not getting stabbed quite as often. So once you've got this out of the pot, you can kind of size it up in the bonsai pot and see that that still needs to come down pretty significantly. Several inches need to come off the bottom. So that's just a matter of loosening up any soil that wants to fall right off, and then starting to work with the roots to free them. So ultimately we need this plant to be able to sit down lower we need the soil line to be lower than the rim of the pot, because I don't really want this type of thing going on in this pot. So I'm just breaking off much of the soil. You will damage a few of the roots in this process. It's not a big deal at all. It's a succulent plant. This is all full of water. So if you reduce the plant's uptake capacity by 2% or even 20%, you're not going to do it any damage. So it's starting to get a little bit more dense up toward where this trunk comes in and flares out to root mass. See where we are. We're getting kind of close. I'm going to see if I can expose a little bit more trunk tissue to reduce the hill that way. So I'm just pulling off the loose soil right around the trunk, right at the soil line of many cacti and succulents. By the way, you'll see discolored tissue. That's not necessarily a problem at all. It's just where the plant has perhaps been under soil and shaded out, or otherwise sometimes cuttings, when they're put in a pot, a large rock is held on each side, so sometimes there can be scratches from that rock holding the initial cutting up. So I've gotten down to a pretty hefty root there, and thankfully it's going laterally, so I don't have to remove that, I don't believe. See where we are. So that may be getting close to the extent of what I can remove. Let's see if there's anything more in here. So in this process, what I'm going to do, the way this all works out, is through the bottom, through the wiring holes in this pot, I'll be able to wrap wires across and across, or I could possibly do around in some manner, but I don't think I want to do that. If I forget the wires on, I'll choke the plant, and that wouldn't be a wonderful outcome. You see that main root going down and dividing out. So that is the extent of what we'll be able to do with this one. So the next step will be preparing for the wiring. What I'm using is electrical wire. I believe it's 14 gauge coated or insulated. I'm not sure what it is. It's wire with rubber on it, rubber-ish. So I need to, first I'll put a little hook in the end of this wire. That's what will catch on the bottom of the pot. So something close to a 90-degree bend. Then I'm going to run this up through the bottom of the pot. And I'm going to estimate how much excess wire I'm going to need to cover that, to go across that root ball and make it down through the other side where that hook should actually be. So it's hooked in there in the bottom. And I can see that I've got plenty of space there, so I'm going to cut it, but I'm not yet going to put a hook in that end, just in this one, so that I can set the plant in there. I think I actually will go around the trunk here with the wire, and it will be exposed in the finished product anyway, so I won't forget to unwire it. But since I made that last minute decision, the piece of wire isn't quite long enough, so I'm going to go, it begins here. Rather than going diagonally, I'm just going to wrap it around the trunk once and go to this back hole. So you can see how the wire, I think, is wrapped around the trunk. I'm going to hold the plant just about in the position I want it and stick the wire in and through and get a hold of it beneath the pot where it's coming out. So now that I have a hold of it down here, I'm going to again try to position this plant about as I'd like to see it in the finished product, and then pull that wire and bend it over at a 90-degree angle again, so it's not going to come up through that hole. So this is actually the kind of finished look that I want. I want the plant all the way to one side, well, most of the way to one side, and then I do actually want that hook plenty evident. You could obviously plant it just like this, but that would be boring. So I've got my first wire around the trunk. It's going from this corner to that beneath. Now I'll take another piece of wire, run it up from the bottom, and try to go basically cross corners with it. So there's that one. I'm going to unroll this wire to give myself some space to play. I'm going to grab this, remembering to pull upward on the spine so they're not going to mutilate me. I'll pull this wire through, and then I'm going to go around the trunk, probably with all of these. So I'll wrap it around the pot here, or around the trunk, I mean. Get it into the position I want, and find a hole to go through in the bottom. Put it through the bottom, see if I can pull that through. So I've got it through the bottom here, and I'm going to bend that over flush with the bottom of the pot, and then I'll need to, how about that? Now I've got this wired in pretty well. It took 3 or 4 wires, whatever I just did, but you can see that without additional support, it's structurally sound in there. So all I'm going to do is put the potting media that it just came in back in there. I'm actually going to add a little more gravel though. Everybody has chicken grit in a cookie jar off to the side, don't you? So I have 2 handfuls of, probably going to go kind of close to 50-50. Just to assure even better drainage. What will happen when you do this, by the way, is you've reduced the plant's uptake capacity. You are developing a better root system, because every time you do prune one of those roots, I'll say prune, you may have say torn, as you're pulling apart that root ball. Every time you do prune one of those, cut one of those, it's just like the top of a tree. This single root is going to, when you prune it, divide off into more. So you end up with a more fibrous root system, which is part of what you want to develop in something like this. So I'm going to take that. It's you can see, by the way, that I'm doing 50-50-ish. So that's getting kind of close to where I want to be with that media. The plant's a mess, but you can see how this worked. I wonder if I'll want this straight. I wonder if I can shove some soil under that, because I'm pretty certain I do want that a little more straight. Yeah, I think there's just a void under that root mass, and that needs to be filled in anyways. You don't want voids, or the air in that void will dry out those roots and really may not kill the plant, but it obviously can limit the plant. So that is about how it turns out. I want this trunk fairly upright here, or vertical, plumb, whatever you want to say. And then have that curve going there. This is Madagascar palm, or Pachypodium lameri, that in my mind is certainly a treasure.